button. There you go.
Oh, that sounds better done.
I think the speaker probably needs to be...
First of all, my name is Rodney Lincoln. You may have heard that name in the news, on TV. I'm the one that was accused of killing a woman and stabbing 2 young girls several times. I was convicted of these crimes. I went to prison for these crimes. I spent 36 years in those prisons for these crimes. I did not commit these crimes. Now I can tell you all the horror stories about prison, all the things that I've seen that people shouldn't see. But what I want to talk to you about today is not all the things that you hear about, it's all the things that you live through when you're there. You don't sleep in the morning if you feel like it, because they tell you to get up. If you don't like their food, then you do without, because they tell you what you eat. If you like to dress nicely and look neat, well, that's not going to happen in prison. You want to go around, visit your friends and say hello and go do things. That doesn't happen. I'll tell you what does happen. You get up the same time every day. And you look at the same person in the front next to you.
This is the testimony of a moral brother.
And you go to the same dining hall, eat the same breakfast that you ate yesterday and day before and day before and the one you eat tomorrow. You see the same people every day. All once in a while, a new face to come in. But it doesn't take long, that new face gets old too. I was real lucky. I had a large support group. There's a lot of people that don't have that.
Praise the Lord.
One of the things that I do remember well is all the people who offered me their support, their prayers, their words of encouragement. No, I'm not just talking about my family. They were there too. And some of my friends stuck with me. I'm talking about all the people who care about justice. All the people who want to fight injustice. All the people who never knew me at all. And yet they came to fight for me, to help me, to give me encouragement. These are the people that made it possible for me to do 36 years in prison. On June 1st of 2018, me, a prisoner in the Jefferson City Correctional Center in Missouri, got a phone call. Well, you say that's no big deal. It is when it's the governor of the state calling you. And he told me, Rodney, I just wanted to call and tell you that I'm commuting your sentence to time soon. and you be able to go home.
Amen.
And the only thing I could think of at that moment was thank you. And then he said, Rodney, I want you to use the rest of your life to become a better person. I want you to make people around you better people. I want you to make the community in which you live a better community. And may God bless you. And my response to that is God bless you. That was a long conversation. That was a powerful one. That same day, I walked out of the prison doors a free man. Well, almost free. You see, in the eyes of the state of Missouri, I'm still guilty. Even though we proved that the evidence they had against me didn't come from me. Even though the victim recanted and said I wasn't the one that committed the crime, I'm still guilty in the eyes of the state. But you know what?
God
The
knows.
state was wrong when they sent me to prison. That means they're wrong now when they say I'm guilty.
That's right.
But my main concern is not me. My main concern is those I left behind me.
That's right.
I talk about Reggie Ewing. I talk about Jeff Winehouse. I talk about Michael Police. I talk about Lamar Johnson. And there's many, many more sitting in there just waiting for someone to say to them, you can go home soon. Without us, that may never happen.
That's true.
Without us fighting for them, they may never hear those words, you can go home soon. Today I am a free man. I can walk the sidewalk, or I can get in my car and take off. I can keep my mouth shut and not say anything about those that are left behind me. Or I can beg all of you within the hearing distance of my voice to help me, help those who cannot help themselves because they're locked behind prison walls. Help me.
Hello, my name is Michael Amick. Like Rodney here, I was too wrongfully convicted. And I think that an overhaul of our judicial system is in order to stop what happened to myself and happened to Rodney. People don't realize the power that a prosecutor or a judge, mainly a prosecutor, has over the average citizen until it affects them or affects their loved ones, and quite frankly, they don't care until they're put in that position. I believe that California has made one of the best steps so far as far as reining in prosecutors' power, because our government is a system of checks and balances. I mean, we've all went to school, they teach this, they taught it in civics class and history, and so you have three branches of government that each has equal power and equal checks over all of them. And yet our prosecutors have nobody checking the balance of their power. They have unfettered ability. They can say, you're going to get prosecuted, you're not, how long you're going to get, your sentence, recommended to the judge. California now has to where if they catch or you can prove that a prosecutor has withheld what's called Brady material, that's a felony in the state of California. And I'm not a big California fan because I live in Missouri and I love the state I live in, but that's a big step. That's a monumental step. And if every state would go, you know what, that's correct, because all these Brady violations they withheld evidence. They withheld evidence in my case. I'm sure in Reggie Ewing's case, Michael Fleet's case, I know, Jeffrey Winehouse's case, you have misconduct and you have withholding of evidence that would be favorable to the person accused. And we have this thing called the Constitution. And everybody's, yes, I know about the Constitution. You ask a police officer, oh yeah, I know the Constitution. Okay. Well, do you know the Bill of Rights and what the Constitution's for? Oh yes, they're fully versed in it. Well, every wrongful conviction is a violation of our constitutional rights. We have a constitutional right to due process under the law. I mean, that's just a given. And when a wrongful conviction occurs, for whatever reason, false identification, prosecutorial misconduct, police misconduct, mistaken identity, it's still a violation of our constitutional rights to be free, without due process. Without due process under law, we're all prisoners. We're all wrongfully convicted, and that's where I stand. I believe that prosecutors in the state of Missouri and across the country, they need to have a commission maybe above them, a board of people that, if they want to prosecute somebody for whatever reason, they put their recommendation forward, and if the commission or the board says, hey, there's really nothing here, or there's not enough here, and that's it. The ones they say, yes, prosecutor, you put forward enough information, let's prosecute. It's kind of like a grand jury, and when I was locked up, I met people from Kansas City and St. Louis and Jefferson City, Columbia, and they're like, well, you got to have an indictment, they have to have a grand jury. Not where I'm from. We don't have grand juries. And that just floored them. They had no idea. Well, how can you prosecute without a grand jury indicting you? It's real simple. We have a part-time prosecutor. And half the time he's, doing his little law, his own practice, and the other time he's prosecuting cases. And if he doesn't like you, well, you might just get prosecuted. If he does like you, you might not get prosecuted.
Even if you committed murder.
Even if you committed murder, yes, sir. I mean, look at Russ Ferrier. Leah Askley, I can't remember the last name. And in the same breath, when I'm talking about prosecutors, I want to talk about judges too, because I was raised always to respect the law, to respect our legal system, and that if you work hard, you go to school, you do right, then you're good. Nothing bad should happen to you. You don't have to worry about the law, the police, and stuff like that. And then when I was wrongfully convicted, one of the things that stuck in my mind was I had attorneys always say, well, we don't want to make the judge mad. Don't do that, that might make the judge mad. And I thought to myself, well, why would it matter if the judge got mad? Because if the judge is doing his job, he's supposed to be, or he or she, is supposed to be fair and impartial, regardless of if they're mad, if they don't like your position, they're still supposed to view everything with impartiality. If they can't do that, then they don't need to be a judge. And a jury should decide. But that's all I heard. Oh, we don't want to do this because you might make the judge mad. They wasn't worried about this. They was worried about angering the judge. I mean, that's got to change too. You have rogue judges and rogue prosecutors, and they wield too much power. And we as citizens have a duty to our fellow citizens that when we see an injustice happening, we're supposed to do something about it. It would be just like if we're standing here, and someone gets hit by a car out there in the street. Now we have a duty as citizens and human beings to go out there and render aid to them. It's the same thing with someone who's been wrongfully convicted, because they are pretty much in the same position as that person just got hit by a car. They're helpless. And I've been there. I know. Rodney's been there. Michael Polite. I was with Michael Polite. Same thing. He's helpless in prison. It's up to us. We have a responsibility, and not just us here, everyone.
Amen.
These people that we wave signs at, trying to give them a honk as they go by, they have no idea. They live in a little bubble that they think is their world, and they think it's freedom, until someone comes up and decides, you know what, I've got this much power over you, and just like that judge, if you make me mad, I might put some handcuffs on you, and you don't have that freedom anymore. They don't think it can happen to them. But every police officer knows what we're saying is true. So we've got to start somewhere, and changing people's minds about, this not being able to happen to them, or the state of our judicial system. That's one thing. Just like Jeffrey Winehouse. I didn't know who he was, never heard of him. And when I'd heard his name before I got out. And then when I got out, I did some research on him. If anybody could see the video of what happened to him, I mean, I don't know anybody that's black, white, green, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. I don't care who you are. If you see the video of what happened to Jeffrey Winehouse right here in the heartland, Missouri of the United States, then you should be going, wait a minute, what is going on in this country? That's not the country I live in. And like he said, Detective Folsom, or Sergeant Folsom.
Sergeant Folsom.
Somebody knew there was something wrong with him. I mean, it's just clear cut. You don't get out of the car and say, well, why are you carrying a gun for, Jeffrey? Well, because I have the constitutional, I got one of these right here. I can carry a gun. And then Jeffrey says, well, why are you carrying a gun? And then 2 seconds later, bam, 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 8 shots. And, they were supposed to kill him. I'm surprised he lived. I'm glad he lived. One day he will be out here with me and Rodney, I'm sure of it. As will Michael Polite, Reggie Ewing, look, Ricky Kidd. The prosecutors had all Ricky Kidd's evidence, knew it. I mean, at some point in time, someone has to look at this and step up and go, this isn't right. I need to do something about this. Ricky Kidd, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was at the sheriff's department applying for a gun permit when the crime happened. And he was on videotape. And you got to think to yourself, if he can get arrested for murder and get sent away for life when he's on camera at the police department, then who out here is really safe? Nobody's safe. We could all get arrested walking to our cars. But, we have to educate people of that fact first. They have to be able to see it somehow or another. And this, our orange shirts and our, people probably are like, justice, not politics. A guy stopped and said, what does that mean? I said, wrongful convictions. Oh, starts honking, So, we're getting there. And I know another thing I was going to say. The age that we're living in, I believe, is getting better. Because people are demanding transparency. And that's the best thing for us. Transparency. And then, the second thing, you need 2 things. You need transparency and accountability. If you don't have those 2 things, then we're never going to have a justice system that works like it's supposed to. One of the things that really bothers me, especially where I'm from, is if you go to the courthouse, you can't have a cell phone or a recording device. It's up to the judge. I do not understand that. Me and Matt here have talked about, the 8th Circuit's stance on videotaping public servants in public. That's our rights. It's not for someone to decide, yes, you can do that, we will allow you to do that. There's no allowing. The Constitution says this is public, I can do this. That's a public building. Now, yes, you can't carry a firearm in there, obviously, but why in the world would the courtroom be off limits to recording devices, video cameras? If it's not obstructing the proceedings, what are they trying to hide? I mean, it makes no sense. And once again, we're going to have to stand up and go, hey, like me and Matt was talking about, this case about videotaping police, it's going to have to come to a head. Because you can't have myself, being a citizen of this country, and have, say, a relative of mine that lives on the East Coast and another relative that lives on the West Coast. And we all under the same Constitution. But they can videotape a cop in public. On this side, on that side. But I'll get arrested if I do. That's not justice. That's not what our founding fathers intended. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to, you have to stand up for one right, or you will lose that one, and the one after that, and the one after that. Just like wrongful convictions, just like I said before, they are denial of our constitutional rights to due process under law. We all have the same right of that. Me and Rodney have just been deprived of that, and you all have seen the effects of it. We've seen the effects of it. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. All right.
My name's Matt Thompson. I'm just going to say a few words about the Jeff Winehouse case because that's the one I know the most. I began getting involved when I first heard about this case a little over a year ago, year and a half. And I went to see Jeff, and I found the most intelligent and Christian, God-fearing person you'd ever want to meet. And I really enjoyed my conversation, and since then we've become close friends. And I think this case is immensely important because our founding fathers, when they broke away from England and they established this country, they established a complicated regime to protect the citizens. And each and every one of them said that the most important thing is the right to freedom of the press. And when they said freedom of the press, they weren't talking about a card-carrying, credentialed, licensed CNN or whatever operator. They were talking about each and every single person. Every one of them published their own pamphlets, and dare I say it, bulletins. And they considered not only our right to a free press, and to criticize our government, and to criticize our sheriffs and judges, but they considered it our responsibility. And it is our responsibility, and that's why we're here today. And Jeff Winehouse did that, and when he did it, they sent Missouri State Highway Patrol to his house to take his computers so that he couldn't do it anymore. And then they set up an ambush. They invited him about a week later to come into this ambush to get his computers back. They shot him 4 times in the head and 4 times in the chest. Jeff Winehouse never attempted any assault. You can see it all. What they didn't realize was that he recorded the whole thing on his spy camera on his watch. We now know that the entire testimony of Sergeant Folsom, who shot Jeff, was completely false. But yet Jeff sits in prison for 30 years. Every appeal, every habeas corpus thing, the system protects itself rather than the citizens it's designed to protect. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, we found out, fortunately, because Sergeant Henry Folsom sued the state of Missouri after all this occurred. And it came to light in the process of the appeal of this suit. Most of the information is still under lock and key. Only the government can see it. But we now know that Sergeant Henry Folsom suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome dating back to the year 2000, 12 years before he shot Jeff. And he was heavily medicated with psychotropic drugs. On the day that he shot Jeff Winehouse, he failed a drug test. And the next day, they relieved him of his duties, and they never allowed him to work again because they knew he was dangerous. But yet, they kept him on the payroll for 2 years. They kept him on the payroll without allowing him to work, paid him to do nothing, because they wanted to control him until Jeff Winehouse could be convicted and all of his appeals be exhausted, which happened in 2014. And when it finally, all those appeals were exhausted, they fired Henry Folsom. And then he sued the state of Missouri for firing him. But yet, at Jeff's original trial, none of this information was ever revealed. It would have led to his acquittal, most assuredly, if this information had come out. He was fired because he was on psychotropic medication. But he was on that psychotropic medication back to the year 2000. And they asked, during Jeff's trial, they asked Sergeant Henry Folsom under oath, was he on medication? And he testified no. Mr. Becker, you're the prosecuting attorney. That's clear in black and white in the court record, clear evidence of perjury. But yet the system protects itself. Henry Folsom still walks free. He's the only person that committed a crime that day, but yet Jeff Winehouse still sits in prison. We have it all in writing. We know that he lied under oath. Not only did the government commit a Brady violation in his original trial by suppressing evidence that would have led to his acquittal, but when he filed for habeas corpus, the state of Missouri, under the direction of then Attorney General Josh Hawley, who is now a U.S. Senator, was sitting on all of this evidence in Folsom's case. He knew that Sergeant Folsom had committed perjury. He knew that Sergeant Folsom was on psychotropic medications the day he shot Jeff. And I believe he knew Jeff was innocent. Yet he revealed none of this in his response to the habeas corpus and successfully argued to get Jeff's habeas corpus petition quashed. So I think the governor and the attorney general need to do a complete review of what happened with the Missouri State Highway Patrol in this case, because they knew that Sergeant Henry Folsom should never have attempted to murder Jeff Winehouse. They relieved him of his duties on the day, but yet they allowed this wrongful prosecution to go forward. And here we sit today. We complain, and nobody, no authorities is brave enough to do anything about it. Thank you.
Profession, not as an attorney, but fighting government, and primarily here since I live in Franklin County with Franklin County. But we can have all of the rhetoric in the world, and I am totally in favor of these groups, but you've got to think of something very positive or very factual. Most of the groups that we have, we don't accomplish what we really want. And to me, there's only one way it'll be done, and that's through the court system itself. And it takes a sharp individual or a superb lawyer who will listen to you and not just be for the money, because that's how you win the cases. Jeff Winehouse, which we've talked about, if we had the money to hire an expensive attorney like Scott Rosenblum, Jeff never would have been in jail. But because we only had a few $1,000s, Hugh Eastwood does a pathetic job. Myself, I have fought many battles. In the courthouse right across the street, I've had over 7 cases in there. Most of them were declared moot because the legislature in Missouri changes the laws. But the courts are very corrupt. When I had in the appellate court in St. Louis a matter, and the judge agrees with me in the Eastern District, but then he rules against me saying the Missouri legislature did not mean what they said. How in the world can that be justice? It isn't. Now, an interesting sidebar, Matt Becker, who I have petitioned several times, now the prosecuting attorney of Franklin County, to reopen the Winehouse case. I don't know if he will or not, but I had an interesting deal with Matt Becker. We had a case in the Missouri Supreme Court. He was the attorney for Franklin County, and I won that case. And that made me feel very, very good and complimented by 2 Supreme Court justices. My overall point is we have got to get good attorneys, good Christian attorneys who will fight the system and then maybe come back and sue the government later, like in Jeff's case, and get a few $1,000s to pay for it. The average person, 99% of the people in this country cannot do it. I don't care how you look at it, they can't do it. We can have rallies and get together, and I'm all for that, going to understanding. But until we fight them in the courts, we are not going to win these battles. Thank you for letting me run at the mouth.
I just want to add that I have been supporting the Jeff Winehouse wrongful conviction and the attempts to get him freed. And I also want to let you know, just recently, he has had my phone number, and when he calls me, it's not collect. He pays to talk to us, okay? So we're speaking for him. All right, I don't collect phone calls from Jeff. He pays. It's on his nickel. Thank God. Free Jeff Winehouse now. Another victim of Robert Parks.
At stake also. The felon is trying to repeat that